Not. So Patrick, do we, do we describe this for everybody, Rob?
What?
You
What?
describe it. You describe it. I
What?
do enough talking.
Whatever. I think any car's dead in iRacing. I think it's gone.
Oh, it's definitely. I agree. It's not going to survive much. But I still think we'll find opportunities to race it, just not as fruitful as before. Some of your like some of them just want to like make. What's the thing? Like that guy wanted to make like dolls out of Tyler's hair, but then there's just other guys who are just like.
He did.
He did. He would say weird things to Tyler, man. Like he was a strange guy. And then like other guys would just show up out of nowhere. He's like,
I
"Oh,
just need to-
we never met you? Sure, come race this 24 with us." And then you just jump in the car and wreck us out in a lap and be like, "Okay, never see you again."
Yeah, that
Like,
was
okay. Well, better luck next year, I guess.
that was the guy from.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody, and welcome along to AMS, the American Muscle Series here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. I apologise if that intro was ever so slightly awkward, but here we are at the Sebring International Raceway, a circuit that has seen no shortage of racing over the last 7 days or so. Now, we get to take some American muscle cars, Ford Mustangs to be exact, over to a virtual version of this racetrack, completely laser scanned, of course, so important with all of those bumps. And well, it would only be fitting to run something of an endurance race around this circuit. Normally we run 40-minute races here in the American Muscle Series. Sometimes we do a sprint format of 20 and 20, but today 60 minutes ahead of us, the full endurance format of this league. I'm Tom Dillon, and well, this is going to be an exciting event. We're going over to qualifying right now. We're having a look at Chuck Labano, I think it is, once we get the race information off of your screen. Wonderful day out there in Florida. I believe they've had a few bouts of rain over the last couple of days, but all nice and sunny over on the simulator. Here is Chuck Labano heading up into Sector 2 on his first outlap of the day. Slight lock-up, slides the car through. 10 minutes this session. You have about 4 laps, I think it is, to try and get the job done. And then the second you've completed that, the checker flag flies, and we move over into the race section. Here he goes then, Chuck Labano, straight up into what I'm going to call the Le Mans complex of 15 and 16. Technically 16 is the only corner called Le Mans, and look how much this car is going to just bounce around. Not so much as he will later on in the circuit. This is one of the more nice areas of it to widen the entry onto the left-hand side. Go down the Allman Straight and into Sunset Bend. I think we might just be racing into the sunset this evening. It is currently in the sim time, 9:33 a.m. I think we go over to the evening once we get into the race session. Bouncing his way through Sunset Bend is Chuck Lobano, ready to start his first proper lap of the afternoon. Across the line, I don't think it will be a lap time registering. No, it won't. It is a out lap completely. Now bouncing down into turn 1. Car looking nice and stable. In fact, the Mustang's riding the bumps very nicely indeed. You see the prototypes in the real world over the course of the last 2 endurance races we've had here on Friday and Saturday. And you see the prototypes really bouncing around and really not riding those bumps very well at all. But these Mustangs seem nice and stable. Chuck Lobano here. A pretty clean lap so far. No major mistakes. Nothing to really stand out about it either. Here he goes into the chicane. Awkward hairpin chicane. It's a decent first couple of sectors for Chuck Lobano, but it's Keith Nelson Jr. who's purple in the first 3 mini sectors. Cones hit dictates the brake markers in iRacing, and it's going to be about the 3 cone mark that Chuck Lobano opts to brake around most of these corners. Usually dictates, well, usually just about the 100-meter board, isn't it? That translates into that in the sim. Up now into sector 3, deep into sector 3, into the Le Mans corner of turn 16. Widens his entry to that Chuck Lobano. Need to get a good exit, use the curb on the exit, and then down the Allman Straight. These cars aren't particularly speedy in a straight line. 125 mile an hour. He might find himself getting up to maybe 130 as he goes up into the braking zone for Sunset Bend. Braking down. He goes, trusting those rear pads that are lighting up. Nelson Jr. lights up the timing tower, 2:19, as the lap times start to come in flurries. Lobano across the line. He's going to find himself going 9th in the amateur division. That's 3rd in class. 10th overall now, of course. Justin Arliss goes 4th on the standings. I think actually probably a good time to bring up the championship points for this current season. Only 4 rounds to go, including this one. And it's relatively tight at the top of those pro standings, which we're trying to pull up onto your screens in just a moment's time. Both championships actually very, very close at the moment. And I am hearing that in fact we don't have the championship standings, so you are going to just have to take my word for it that they are indeed very, very close. But anyway, Nelson Jr. and Aeronom is pretty much the championship battle for the pro class, and then the amateur class is just, well, there's about 5 people in that championship battle. So unfortunately those championship standings not able to show you them at the moment. I'll see if I can find them actually in Randall's posted them anyway. But anyway, we move on. Another thing to note for tonight actually is that there is a race director, a live race director. We'll be handing out drive-through penalties if and when they are required. Here's Keith Nelson Jr. then on his 2nd qualifying lap. It's not a superb one from him. In fact, I think he might opt to jump into the pits after this. No, he stays right out wide, out of Sunset. He's going to have to eye up one final run at this. 3 laps the drivers are allowed in this session. Not quite the 4, though I suppose we count the outlap. You get away with it. Aaron Nam goes to the top of the timing sheets. That's a 2:19.0 for the Estonian. He does like to dominate these longer form races, whether it is the 60-minute, whether it is the more orthodox 40-minute in the championship. Nelson knows that this lap at the moment is probably his last real chance at catching back up to Aaron Nam. He hasn't got a great deal of time. Set this one. In iRacing, it's not a 10 minutes and then you have to be across the line by that time. It's 10 minutes and we go into the next session almost immediately. I think they give them about 10 seconds leeway or so, but past that there's not really any doing. Here goes Aaron Nam pulling off to the side of the road. He's going to be done for qualifying, so if we could get a shot of Keith Nelson, who I believe is still circulating here on the championship standings, so never mind. We'll go and talk about these. It's 10 points separating Aaron Nam and Keith Nelson Jr. The rest of the top 5 is Banks, Enriquez and Malone. All of these guys separated by 45 points in the pro standings. Random group in 6th, Evan Hubschak in 7th, Todd Hansen in 8th, Jay Bass in 9th, Justin Arliss in 10th, Keck, Howard, Zoya, Robichaud, Hodgson, Nickham, Kazenda and Ronenberg round out the first page of results. Nelson Jr., by the way, is purple in the first mini-sector, but not impressive throughout the rest of this racetrack. It's Parrish and Clymer, 19th and 20th, Dunnington, Sanchinelli, Clark, Castillo, Fletcher and Gotter down to the 26th position. And as for the amateur standings, we're just waiting to see the top of that page, unless we're going to do this in reverse order, which I suppose we can do. No, we won't. We'll go to the top down. Dan Ott leads the way here with a really reasonably comfortable margin of about 20 points or so. David Moore is in 3rd, Chuck Labano 2nd, Schultes and Blair round out the top 5. Nelson Jr., by the way, not able to go on to pole position in the meantime, as that qualifying session is just about to finish off. Mike Thompson Jr. is in 6th, Jay Little in 7th, Michael Buchik in 8th, Matthew Thompson in 9th, and Roy Baker rounds out the top 10. And it's Andres, Brooks, Price, Snook, Batista, Bevel, Bork and Eshtep in the top 18. And rounding out the first page of results, then it's Hozier, Besnard, Brandon Carl, Chris Logan, Kenny Meadows, Jesus Andrade, Tom Wentz and James Rushley. Andrew Gillian in 27th. We're going to have to quickly go to the starting grid for this race then, because I'll get underway very, very quickly indeed. It's Aaron Nam on pole position. Keith Nelson Jr. starts in 2nd with Matt Malone in 3rd. Louis Enriquez lines up 4th. Evan Hubschak and Scotty Banks make up the next row of the grid. Then it's Bast and Keck rounding out the top 10. Zoya and Hansen. Arliss is in 11th with Danot on pole position for the AMS. Then it's Howard, Andres, Ronenberg, Baker, Puchik, Dunnington, Thompson Jr., apparently, Clymer, Chuck Labano, Hozier and Nickham. And they are about to get going, so I'll be very mindful indeed. Brandon Carl, Sanchinelli, Gazenda, Little, Blair, Clark, Price, Bork, Thompson, Eshtep, Brooks and Batista, the 36th. That is the grid then. Ahead of this race, we're ready to go to the race, and we're trying to get the slight visual artifact off the top of your screen in just a moment's time. Producer Jesse is working on it very, very quickly, I'm sure. And I think Randall McGrew is going to join us in the booth in just a few moments at a time. So that's going to be very exciting. We're getting ready to watch the start of this race. Trying to look at Aaron Nam, but well, can't see him right now. So trying to iron out the technical bugs. We do thank you for your patience in bearing with us. I'm just waiting for these guys to get going. As there they are, lined up on the grid. And we are about to go to the lights as we welcome Randall McGrew into the box. We'll drag him in after the start. As it's green flag flying in Sebring. It's a good start for Aeronam. Evan Hubschak pulls to the inside further back, but Keith Nelson Jr. trying to invite himself alongside as they go down into turn 1. There's Luis Enriquez finding himself under pressure from Scotty Banks on the outside line, who himself is under pressure from Hubschak as they go down into turn 1. Aeronam leads us away. It's 3 wide further back, and it's a crash, and it's immediate. And there's 2 or 3 cars off straight away. It's Hansen involved. There's a little bit of carnage further back. I'm not too sure what happened. It looks like Brian Howard is involved as well. I think the bumps at Sebring clearly just being a little bit harsh on some of these drivers very early on. But the most important thing is that Keith Nelson Jr. has gained the lead of the race. Aeronam not quite able to get the dream start that he'd like. There's Scotty Banks further back in your picture. He's trying to make up some moves into 4th position. That would be on Luis Enriquez. Jay Bass is trying to... Well, he's going to find himself under pressure. He falls down into 8th position with a slight bit of a slide. Ready to go into Sector 2 for the first time. We welcome Randall McGrew into the commentary box. Randall, welcome along.
I really don't want to be here, but here I am. I had some pedal malfunctions, so now you get to hear the soothing sounds of my voice for this hour-long race.
Exactly, and not the ideal start from Aeronam, or in fact, a few of the drivers down into turn 1, but Aeronam more potently for this championship, finding himself in 2nd position in what could be a championship-defining race for these 2 guys at the front.
Looks like Matt Malone carrying a little bit of damage there from that first lap incident. I'm seeing now in the race chat that the live steward is investigating 83, 32, and 44. I think that's Dustin Hollis was involved in that incident too.
Yeah, I think 3 cars involved all in all. Scotty Banks is looking to try and make a move into Sunset Bend. Has just tucked back in behind Luis Enriquez. It looks actually that Zoya is going to get a little bit racy with Matt Malone down into Sunset, turn 17 of this Sebring International Raceway, and no one really making a move through there just yet. This is one of those corners, one of those rare corners in racing where there is really only one line. And as we go into the 2nd lap of this race, we welcome Sam Tully into the YouTube chat. Says, come on, Hozier. He's currently sitting further down the order, but here is what happened down into turn 1. I think it was that car just on the inside line, Randall.
It looked like
Just
Matt Malone there on the inside just maybe blended out a little too quickly. They were 3 wide. I don't know if he didn't know they were 3 wide, but ended in disaster.
Disaster indeed. That's Scotty Banks. Not quite disaster for him, but it's not an ideal situation. 6th position at the moment. Tries to hold it down the inside. Back into 4th. He's under pressure from Evan Hubschak, Zoya, and Matt Malone now swooping around the outside. Banks is able to get up into 4th, but here comes the attack from Matt Malone. It's Hubschak on the inside. They might just go 4 wide here as we go down into the hairpin. What is going to happen here? It's incredible stuff on lap 2 of this race. Down the inside goes Matt Malone, trying to find a way through on Scotty Banks. Not quite able to find his way through just yet, though. And it's line of stern, but 4 wide and no contacts.
And I'm seeing now on the chat from the stewards, the 83 is going to be giving a drive-through penalty for responsibility for that lap 1, turn 1 incident. So he'll be having to make up a lot of ground from that.
He will, as here is now a move around the outside from, well, on Phil Keck there, and now back down the inside. That's Evan Hubschak looking for the move. You have to forgive me, I'm battling a slight issue here, as all my cars have decided to turn white, but we are sorting this out. It's Kevin Evan Hubschak, who is now on my screen being told it's Eschneb, which it definitely isn't, but anyway, I'll try and get on sorting that. But at the moment, Keith Nelson is holding on to the lead of the race. It's 4/10 of a second to Aeronam as we've just hit the, well, about to hit the 5-minute mark in this one. Streaming through on this 2nd lap. Someone pulling to break the toe in the top of your picture.
Right now,
Maybe
it looks pretty orderly. After the first couple laps, they've sorted themselves out. We see a couple cars carrying damage. We have to wonder if they're going to use their fast repair for that little bit of damage, or if they're just going to leave it. These things not very aero sensitive because there's not many aerodynamics on a brick.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it, Randall, as there is a move I think that might just be for the lead of the race, is it? No, not quite. As I said, all my cars are white at the moment, so I can't really have any reference as to where we are on the circuit, I'm afraid. But it is a battle going on anyway. I can't actually trust either what these cars are, because right now Danot's in Dustin Arliss' car, which is ever so slightly confusing. He's now down in 39th position. He's Dustin Arliss. It's definitely not up here right now.
And I'm seeing another message in the chat here. The 109 and 166 are currently under investigation, so another incident being looked at by the stewards.
So a little bit of controversy early on into this race is my paint situation, for those interested, is sort of sorting itself out. I can now see Aero Nam in the correct car, trying to pressurise Keith Nelson Jr. It wouldn't surprise me if Aero is going to try and run line of stern for the time being and wait to have that counter attack or have that attack later on into this race, perhaps into the second stint, where we've seen him be so strong throughout the course of this championship, going to extend his championship lead by just the 3 points that you gain over a single position in this 60-minute race format. Being able to gain those points would be so important for his championship charge. Is Aero Nam going to treat us to a display as we head out of the Le Mans corner for the third time in this race? Slight mistake from Keith Nelson Jr. Does Aero Nam decide to try and find a way through, force a way through at this early stage in the race? At the moment, he's not looking very racy at all. He's going to stay behind in second position, use all of that slipstream, save a little bit of fuel, perhaps, and just trust that him and Keith Nelson Jr., they've got the pace over the rest of the field to pull away.
Well, this is exactly what we saw at Interlagos. Kevin was able to give Aero the challenge pretty early in the race. Aero just kind of let him go and then set behind him for the rest of the stint, saving fuel. They came out of the pit stop way ahead of him. So it could be what's going on here again as we're looking at Steph and Price, the 198 car coming through the S's before Le Mans. And so far it looks okay here. Maybe he gets a little bit tail happy there and noses it into the tire barrier. He'll definitely be using that fast repair. Unlucky for Stefan.
One fast repair is available to the drivers throughout the course of this race. The fuel, for those interested, is limited to 55%. We're expecting 16 laps, 17 with the saving, you've said, in the race director's notes, Randall, in terms of the pit stops. We're expecting a 26 lap race. That pit stop strategy then is so important. We know that a driver like Aero Nam plays it so often, so well, but do you fear that maybe he's sort of shown his cards throughout this race and Nelson Jr. is going to get wise and maybe he's got something up his sleeve?
Well, that's about the only thing you can do is try to save fuel in front as well. It's going to be a little bit harder. Any bit of fuel you try to save in front of Aero is just going to let him save even more. So you kind of have to change it up each lap, maybe try to catch him sleeping and pull a little bit of a gap and try to make him push for a lap or two. But other than that, kind of at his mercy there, sitting in second place. It's a little unfortunate, but that's just the nature of racing.
And you can read Aero Nam's strategies quite well, actually, once you've seen it a couple of times throughout the course of a season. He'll be blisteringly fast into that second stint. You watch. Keith Nelson Jr. is going to have to get his pit stop absolutely perfect. I don't know if we've covered it on the stream, but 166 has got a drive-through penalty for incident responsibility. That was for an incident with the 109 car as well. Jeremy Ritchie in the race control seat today. It's Ken Estep, I should say. I apologise with that incident responsibility by the looks of things. Zoya is looking for a move hit. Evan Hubchak is in his sights in that number 7 Mustang, taking a wide line into Sunset Bend, and awkward. It's very awkward indeed. You can see the car bouncing around. Zoya might just get a better exit, and he does. It's a switchback manoeuvre into Sunset Bend, and now he's alongside and around the outside on Evan Hubchak. He's going to have to be brave on the brakes into turn 1. Maybe look for a switchback again. I think will probably be his best course of action here. Instead, he says, thank you very much. I'm going to swoop around the outside, but just a bit extra speed carried through the corner for Evan Hubchak. It's going to be done on the brakes from Fabian Zoya. Not quite in the end. Has to tuck in behind once more of that 7 car.
Tell you, Evan Hoopchak's been exceptionally fast this season. He's just not been able to put together a full race length with that speed. If he can find that speed over a little bit longer distance, he will be a contender in this series for seasons to come. Right now, he's got Fabian breathing down his neck. Fabian's being really patient here. He's trying to look for a move. And nothing's really developing yet. Tried to the outside of turn 1 there, but couldn't get it done. Fabian also pretty quick. These guys are fighting for a top 5 spot. That's a lot of points this week.
Points are increased for these longer distance races. And at the moment, Fabian Zoya is looking to gun for those extra 3 points that he's going to gain with every position that you move up the ladder. Under pressure as well, by the way, from Jay Bass. Dan Ott is in the lead. And at the back of this train, he's in the lead of the amateur division, which has been very competitive this year. Dan Ott right now is seeming pretty okay to lead the way in both this race and the standings. The amateur division, by the way, is brought to you by one of the AMS drivers, the son of one of the AMS drivers, Chuck Lombardo, in his Twitch channel, Royal Smitiy. You can go show some support and give him a follow at twitch.tv/Royal Smitiy.
And that's spelled S-M-I-T-I-Y, Royal Smitiy. Got a pretty good channel over there. Does a lot of shooters, and he's been doing some iRacing here lately.
I have seen that, and I think the viewers will have seen that too, as the wonderful reel appears on the right-hand side of your screens. Here's Mike Nickham looking for a move on Edgar Sanchinelli. Was the winner. Oh, I apologise, Mike Nickham finding himself under pressure from David Clymer. Edgar Sanchinelli's a little bit further up the road in his characteristic yellow car. Was the winner of the Challenger division last season, Edgar Sanchinelli. Moved up to the pro category and just not quite been on the pace of the top guys. But he's a solid contender in the middle of that pack. It's a battle now between 3 of the guys in the pros, 5th through 7th. It's the battle for 5th. It's Evan Hoopchak at the lead of this train. Dan Ott needs to be careful. He's lost touch to the back of this train. However, he is finding himself now under pressure from Dunnington and Phil Keck. That could very quickly turn quite ugly in his quest for that race win. There is a battle between Ronenberg and Andres, and actually Andres is going to get overtaken here, letting through the pro category car. A very Ronenberg might look for a slight counter-attack out of the hairpin chicane. Not quite able to do so. Now Mike Nickham has put in the race chat, Randall, thanks, I'm Batman. I'm not too sure I can decode that message unless you put anything for us.
That's normally something he puts in whenever he passes somebody or says thank you. Yeah, it's just one of Mike's things. He does that. A lot of times he runs a old Batmobile paint job, so that's kind of where that comes from. But I'm really wondering, why is Evan Hoopchak that far back? I'm sorry, that was not Evan Hoopchak. I'm getting all kinds of mixed up. Evan Hoopchak's still up there in that battle for 5th. He's currently in 5th. This mechanical failure has gotten me all out of sorts, Tom.
Yeah, well, I'm out of sorts as well. I mean, it's a difficult day, but anyway, affecting everyone. There must be something in the water out there in Florida. But anyway, Evan Hoopchak now under pressure. Fabian Zoya not quite able to find the move just yet. This race is bubbling up. We're a quarter of the way into it already. We're approaching quarter distance at the 15-minute mark. That will be Hoopchak with good drive out of the corner. We'll just ease a little bit of that pressure. There is a battle further back, and it's Dan Ott, I think, finding himself under the cosh. Here he is. They won't quite go side by side into the corner. In fact, they decide to sit back somewhat. And I do get the sense, Randall, that this is pretty much just exclusively fuel saving at the moment. And then we're going to get a fiery second stint.
Yeah, you can expect to see a lot more racing after the fuel stop. I expect to see a nice variety of strategies too. 4 tires will cost you about 8 or 9 seconds to take, but in the long run, you can make a lot of that time up just off the speed. So we'll see a few drivers probably opt for 4 tires, some only taking 2, probably left sides while they're refueling. 2 tires are absolutely free, so you gain a little bit of time on the stop, but then those cars that took 4 drivers will start reeling you in really quick. I personally experienced this at Snetterton when Scotty Banks took 4 tires, came out of the pit 6 seconds behind me, and there at the end of the race, he was right on my bumper.
Battle for what's going to turn out to be 4th position in the pro category, and potentially for Mike Thompson, a chance at the podium. 2 pro cars, in the amateur category I should say, 2 pro cars just ahead of him on a pro car actually, and that podium. Ronenberg and Andres, the 2 directly ahead. It's not too far, not too much of a stretch to be able to make this move. Ronenberg is going to look to get past Andres as soon as possible, I think, and just unleash Mike Thompson Jr. to try his hand. Here goes Ronenberg trying to squeeze his way through. Wider line into this sequence of corners. Look for the 50-meter-ish board just before. Tip the car into the apex. It's slightly deep from Andres to get a wider line through Le Mans turn 16. Now down to the Ullman Straight. Can Ronenberg get that toe and find his way into 12th position as he goes into turn 17? He's right on the bumper of that 103 car. But Sunset Bend is just such a difficult place to make a move that sometimes, Randall, it's best to not chance it.
Yeah, there's a variety of ways through that corner, and we'll see a few of them employed here, probably on the last lap of the race. We'll see some drag races to the line. This race right now kind of developing as I expected it to. I expected after the first couple laps, people would spread out. We'd see groups and pairs of cars battling with each other. That pit stop is really going to shake things up, especially if people start taking 4 tires. We're going to take a look here at Michael Puchik and possibly Dave Clymer having a bit of an incident. We're going to be turning into Le Mans here. Is he going to run wide too? You see he's carrying a little bit of extra speed there, and that gets loose just like Stefan Price. Much heavier impact, bounces back across the track. Luckily, nobody was there. Resets the car, toes the pits, and will have to use that fast repair.
Battle for the lead of the race once more, though I say battle. Procession really for the lead of the race. Aaron Arm not wanting to go anywhere in relation to Keith Nelson Jr. And I wonder, at what point does Nelson Jr. here, Randall, start to think about gamesmanship and actually just letting Aerodom through? Say, I see what you're trying to do, and I'm just going to not let you. Eventually, one of them has got to play chicken and back out of that.
Well, this is Keith's first season with the league, so I don't know him as well as I know some of the other drivers, but it doesn't really seem to be his style. I think he's just going to run what he brung, try to do as best as he can, save some fuel here and there, but I don't think we'll see much gamesmanship out of him. But you need to keep an eye on that black and teal car there lurking in the background. Scotty Banks, that guy knows how to race too. He knows how to fuel save, and he's plenty fast. So if he gets up there with this group, we could see some really, really interesting strategy employed here for the end of the race. And it could have an actual fight for the lead taking place. It would be awesome.
It would be awesome. I mean, wanted it in one of the longer races all season long. Maybe today is our day. I said that we had one in Interlagos, didn't we? So I'm being a little bit harsh. Here's Dunnington looking to make those pro cars range from it. Actually, Zoya's crashed. I thought I heard the crunch of carbon fibre. Whatever these cars are made of, and it looks like Zoya's taken a tow to the pits immediately. What has happened here? It's got to be a wheel disconnection, surely, because he seems to have just found himself in the wall very abruptly indeed. Did he go onto the grass?
Oh,
Locked up.
It looks like he money shifted that car and blew the engine, smartly pulled it over to the right all the way to the wall, and reset. Downshifted a little too fast, or maybe got to second when he was trying to get to fourth, and blew the engine.
There you go then. I wouldn't have spotted that first time, Randall. So Zoya now registering is out of the session. He has got a fast repair available to him, but it's frustrating for him. There's Edgar Sanchez finding himself losing out actually to Roger Clark, who now looks to go diving down the inside on David Clymer. It's an opportunistic move, bordering into speculative, and turns out to not be fruitful for him. Almost off the circuit is Roger Clark. That allows Edgar Sanchez to have a chance now.
Yeah, I don't know if he was really going for a move there or just turning in earlier. There's a couple different ways you can take that corner as well. I've always had more success with Roger's line. See, Clymer was opening up the entry a little bit more and actually kind of invites a move if you do that. Roger had his nose in there for sure, but was completely clear by the time Clymer closed down on that apex.
Edgar Sancinelli then eyes up Roger Clark, who made a little bit of a mistake earlier on in the lap, and it's now starting to feel the downside of that. Though it's deep from Edgar Sancinelli, and that just takes that pressure off for the time being. Now Roger Clark can turn his attention once more up to David Clymer, sitting in 17th position. Mike Nickham is currently sitting in 16th. He's just at the top of your picture. P5 for Charles Hosier. Sam Tully happy about that in the chat, as that's a move for third place in the amateur category. It's Mike Thompson Jr. finally having caught up to Jeff Andres and finally having overtaken him. But is there going to be a counter-attack from Andres as we go down into Sunset Bend? There might be an attack from Lobano on Hosier.
Oh, trouble in the background. It looks like Roger Clark and Edgar Sancinelli.
It is Roger Clark and Edgar Sancinelli. They've both taken each other out. It's now down into the Sunset Bend we go. Sancinelli's got no engine. And he's struggling to get that car back to the pits. Here is the spin from Roger Clark. He's spun right into the path of Edgar Sancinelli, and they've both essentially found themselves out of the race.
Yeah, this shows a difference between the AM and the pro drivers as well. Roger Clark, a pro driver, was able to actually save that slide a bit. Unfortunately for him, whenever he brought it back, a bit of an overcorrection, and Edgar Sancinelli was there on the outside and collected him as well. He may have been okay if Edgar hadn't been there, but Edgar was there. So now they're both sitting in the pit, going to have to use that fast repair, and their bad day is just getting worse.
And as you predicted, Randall, that number 51 car of Scotty Banks has caught up to this leading train. I think when Scotty Banks is in the party, all of this procession nonsense might just cease to exist. Scotty Banks is going to try and get the lead of this race. I'm sure of it. Let's see what he can do over the next couple of laps.
We're seeing a couple different approaches here on the entry to Tower Turn. It's another one of those corners where there's multiple ways through it. I prefer the tighter line that we saw Eero and Scotty take, just because it helps you keep the left side of the car loaded. You never really get the wheel straight. Keith Nelson, on the other hand, taking the wider entry, getting a nice straight braking zone before he hits the brakes and then turns in. And you see these kind of things at a track like this where people take different lines, and sometimes it can lead to some pretty exciting racing, and sometimes it can lead to absolute heartbreak.
Looks like it is going to be slightly processional for the time being, as Banks just tries to weigh up his opportunities. 40 minutes left in this race, 35 really, depending on how you choose to round. And I do always say, and I said last time, is actually that is a moment from Ronenberg, allows Mike Thompson to get a car in between himself and Andres, giving himself that buffer on this podium. It's a good save actually. Further back, Chuck Lobano is finding himself under pressure from Hosier. In fact, he was trying to apply that pressure to Hosier, and he's not quite able to find his way through. Through Sunset Bend they go. Onto the brakes much later is Chuck Lobano. Can he get the exits out of the corner? One of the resident Canadians to this league, out wide. There goes Charles Hosier, and this might just allow Chuck Lobano alongside down into turn one. No, it won't then. A little bit too far behind. 24 minutes into this race. It's battles for both of the two podiums.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't look now, but it looks like Roy Baker has caught up to Dan Ott. We have two amateur cars in the overall top 10 fighting it out. Looks like Dan's struggling here with a little bit of traffic. We got Ryan Bevel there getting put a lap down by these drivers. Roy Baker is there lurking large in his mirror.
And Jesse Hodgson is into pit lane, as is Dustin Arliss. Is not having the greatest of days at the moment. Can only assume at this stage that is an unscheduled stop. Here is Dan Ott finding himself under an increasing amount of time loss, really, compared to these back market cars. As a cause of these back market cars, I should say, and now it's allowing Roy Baker to have a stab at this race lead on lap 11 of the race. Down they go. And Baker just not quite able to get the drive out of the corners. They've got 5 seconds to Mike Thompson behind, as they have license to scrap this one out. Needs to clear that back marker as soon as possible, does Danot. It's not going to be easy for him as they go up into the Le Mans sequence of 15 and 16, officially just the 2 corners here. Despite the fact it's quite clearly more than 2 corners.
I think those stops are actually, they are somewhat scheduled. They are in the pit window now. The pit window opened on lap 10 and should close around lap 15. So some of those drivers probably had some damage, bringing the car in early for their fuel, going to get that damage repaired. If we're seeing anybody take 4 tires, we'll probably see them come in around lap 13 or 14.
We'll see who is going to blink first and who does choose to take that slightly alternative strategy. Here's Chuck Lobano trying to attack Charles Ozier. Now he pulls to the inside, shows his nose, brakes very late indeed, almost outbrakes himself. Actually, he's quite lucky to get away with that one. Will it get him that better drive out of the corner, though? It definitely gets his nose alongside, but just in the final stage of that exit, there was no doing for him eventually. Here's Ronenberg trying to find a way past Mike Thompson Jr., and there is no way past. Thompson is holding on very nicely indeed. These guys are catching up. 4.2 seconds now between Thompson and Roy Baker in 11th position, but that will stretch out once more if Ronenberg is able to get through, something that he's looking very capable of doing at the moment. Probably about time to mention that all of these drivers are vying for some high quality 3D printed trophies, which have kindly been provided by the Simpit. It's a website, a video show and a community that is built for sim racers to find information about our hobby. The ultimate purpose of the Simpit is to make sim racers faster and more informed. You can search for the Simpit on YouTube or check out their website www.thesimpit.com.
And those trophies are awesome. I'd love to win one day. I did win an older Simpit trophy for a one-off race for their Patreon. They do a monthly or quarterly Patreon race. I got a trophy from one of those. But the trophies he's been making for the leagues are absolutely stunning. I wish I could have one. So I had to beat Eero, and that's pretty hard to do.
Well, you are the owner of the league. Can you not, mint yourself one?
I mean, I suppose I could, but I'd rather earn one the hard way.
I see what you mean. This is 3 guys trying to earn a trophy the hard way. It's the battle for the lead of the race. And I said Scotty Banks was not going to get involved in any processional nonsense, but it looks like Scotty Banks actually got his head screwed on, and whilst unfortunately it doesn't make for the most riveting of viewing, this is at the moment how these guys are probably best served running this race. They don't need to attack each other. That being said, is Aero Nam going to make me eat my words as he bump drafts Keith Nelson Jr. down the straight? Is it now time for Aero Nam to get to the lead of the race? It is. Talk about processional nonsense. There is a move from Aero Nam. It's not very well made though. Can he get the drive out to the turn 1? No, he definitely can't, and that might just invite Scotty Banks to try and go for the move. Again, they stay line of stern, and you don't put it past Aero Nam for this particular thing to just be toying with Nelson Jr.
Well, Keith has been pretty quick, and I'll have to admit, probably the person happiest on the grid that I had a mechanical issue is Keith Nelson, because he and I normally qualify at about the same pace, but it seems like I'm better off the line than him, so I always end up in his way for the first couple laps, which lets Aero scamper off. Once he gets around me, he seems to start reeling in Aero, so Keith really has some pace. So this is not going to be an easy win for Aero, even if he gets a much better pit stop. You're going to see Keith start to reel him in at the end of the race, and now that there's 20 extra minutes to do it in, don't sleep on Keith Nelson.
I'm not so sure, because I think Aero Nam might be planning something with his strategy, just to have that full send stint towards the end of the race. You just never know what he's trying here. There's Mike Nickham is Batman once again in the chat apparently. 53 car looking to attack Evan Hushak. That's Jay Bast. Again, not really a portion of the circuit that you're going to be able to find yourself making a move. I suppose in the multi-class racing we often see at Sebring that's slightly different. Chris Logan is disconnected from the session. He was out of the race long ago anyway. Finally just deciding to shut the sim down and call it a day. No stops for the top 10 at the moment. In fact, no stops for the top 27 at the moment as Matt Malone gets around David Moore for 17th position. That's only just happened. We're fast approaching that pit window though, halfway through the race. These guys can now make it home on a tank of fuel that is limited to 55%. Here's what happened to Matt Malone round on the group.
You see him, he's recovering from that penalty, runs around the outside there, gets the move done pretty easily there on David Moore. Those two actually are teammates in a lot of the endurance special events. We'll see those two run together in the likes of the Daytona 24. I don't think Malone's running the Sebring 12-hour, but they definitely run that 24-hour race at Daytona together every year.
Now, if I was a team admin, team owner, whatever, probably these three guys that I'd want from the AMS running my show for the Daytona 24. Aaron Arm, Keith Nelson Jr. and Scotty Banks still battling as pit stops start to flurry in. Dan Ott, Andres Dunnington, Hosea and Nickham all coming in to the pits, so they have decided to jump. Lap 14 of this race, a couple of laps earlier than perhaps we expected, looking for an undercut on any positions that they can gain. Every single position on this circuit is worth some points, so every position you can gain is worth 3. These guys, I imagine, will be extending this stint as long as they physically can. Well, they've got some back marker traffic just ahead of them. Probably not wise for them to pit just yet. Here's Jay Bast trying to get round Evan Hubchak once again. Still not able to find a way through. Carry on, Randall.
Jay Bass has had a mixed bag of a season. When he's on, he is on. He's here fighting for 5th overall with Evan Hubchak, showing a lot of speed. He's had some bad luck this season. He got involved in an incident, as we saw at Brands Hatch, was the cause of the massive pileup that ended up with Santinelli on his roof. And then last week at Road Atlanta, watched him right there in my rearview mirror get taken out by a lap car. It's really unfortunate. It worked out a lot in my favor because I don't think I would have beat Scotty Banks with Jay Bass breathing down my neck the way he was. But just some really bad luck.
Here's Eric Ronenberg. It's Mike Thompson who is in his sights. Mike Thompson, by the way, looking pretty comfortable in 2nd position now in those amateur standings. Chuck Labano sits in 3rd. He's at the top of your picture because, of course, a lot of these amateur drivers have come into the pits, so it's just shook up the order ever so slightly at the top of that class's field. Probably next lap we're expecting the rest of the field in, and then lap 17 the stragglers. Mike Thompson jumps to the pits. Ronenberg stays out for one more lap. That gives him a chance to get through. Phil Keck jumps into the pits as well. 3 leaders playing this game of chicken. Who's going to jump first? He's going to try and pull the wool over the eyes of the other inside of the pit stop phases. It's such a crucial part of the race at the moment. 25 minutes to go or so, about 26 to be exact. And I think once they get out of this processional phase of this first stint, Randall, this is going to be a cracker of a race.
Absolutely. If these 3 are together at the end of the race, we're going to see a wild finish. We'll see 3 different approaches to sunset, 3 different exits, 3 different speeds. It could be 3 wide there at the end if they're still together. But yeah, this fuel stop's going to be huge. See who takes what tires and who's able to save the most fuel. And if saving fuel is enough, does Keith Nelson have the speed to track somebody down that jumps in because of having to take less fuel? I've seen him do it almost every week this season. He's got the pace.
Brian Howard looks to the outside. This is David Blair that he's battling, and it's David Blair that he gets past. That being said, Blair is going to try and hold this one out. Down the inside he goes. Is there going to be a move? It has to be late on the brakes. No. He can't quite invite himself alongside. Now, as we enter the pit stop phase, I have to say, I did say earlier in the broadcast that there is only one line through Sunset. That was a total misspeak from me. I, delved into my book of Sebring cliches. I keep one for each circuit, figuratively anyway. And I meant to say that there is no line through Sunset Bend, because no matter what you take, it's going to be different every single time, and that just makes the racing so exciting through that corner.
Absolutely, yeah. You ask 5 different drivers how to get through Sunset Bend, and you're going to get 5 different answers. There's definitely one really, really fast way, but if you're fighting with somebody, it's you could bring a map, it wouldn't help you. You're just going to have to put the car somewhere, get to the throttle as early as you can, and hope for the best.
One of science's only unanswered questions, and that is, what line is the best to take through Sunset Bend? Well, lap 16 of what is potentially going to be about a 27 lap race. 24 minutes now to go, and these guys surely have to be in within the next 2 laps. Scotty Banks at the top of your picture in the black aero knob, the focus of your picture, chasing down Keith Nelson Jr. Neither of the 3 have come into the pits to make their one single pit stop that we know they have to make throughout the course of this race. There are more people jumping into the pits. Roy Baker, Mike Thompson has jumped as well. The rest of these guys, though, as you see the pit stops on the top of your screen, it's the top 13 that are yet to have made that pit stop.
And I hate to cut you off here, but I think Mike Thompson's... Oh, we see Roger Clark off into the grass here. Going to bring the car back on and not make contact with anybody. He's been really struggling there with the exit of Lamont tonight and manages to get it back clean this time. But we see Mike Thompson was in the pits again. I think we already seen him in the pits one time. Maybe he got a speeding penalty, had to come back through for a drive-through. I haven't seen anything from the stewards. So possibly a pit road speeding penalty.
That's a good point, actually. He's fallen well down the order. We'll wait to see what his time says. It says 1 stop still, so that would suggest that actually that was a pit speed penalty for Mike Thompson. It's taken him out of contention. That being said, no, there's 2 M. Thompsons, isn't there? There's Mike and Matt. So,
You're right. That could be the wrong one.
Yes, we were looking at the wrong one, because I saw him flying down the order as well. I thought, how has he got to 26? Anyway, Keith Nelson Jr. is into the pits. For all of you Mike Thompson Jr. fans, as Scotty Banks follows Nelson Jr. Out of the race lead into the pits as well. For all of you Mike Thompson fans, don't you worry. It is indeed Matt Thompson who has gone down into 26th position, and he was around there anyway, so it's no harm, no foul at the moment. Bast and Huchak are into the pits as well. So it's Luis Enriquez and Aero Nam, the 2 in this pro category in the top 7 that haven't pitted yet, as Ronenberg comes into the pits as well. So crucial lap for the 2 guys at the front. It is Aero Nam going to be able to find himself with 2 extra tenths of a second over the guys that he was chasing down for all of that first stint.
As I'm watching now, it looks like the pit time for Keith Nelson was 17.8 seconds, and for Scott Banks, 21.25 seconds. So Keith able to save a bit of fuel. Scotty not able to save as much, possibly took 4 tires. And I think it's a tough call. We saw Scotty Banks take 4 tires at Snetterton. It almost paid off really well for him. He may have thought to try it again since he had a nice, comfortable position in the top 3, thinking that speed might pay off in the long run.
We'll wait and see. Right now, he's lost that time to Keith Nelson, as you mentioned, and on track that translates to about 5 seconds or so. So 4 tyres definitely appearing to be on that evidence. What Scotty Banks has taken, is that going to play into his hands later on into this race? Aero Nam, 10 seconds at the lead of this race. It translates to about 34 to Keith Nelson Jr., his main rival in the race, and we think he's got to be into the pits on this lap. I wouldn't have put it past him to fuel saved enough to go onto lap 18. I just don't think, maybe, if we're being totally realistic, it is possible. Let's wait and see if he is going to dive into pit lane.
Right now, that gap is... Right now that gap's 36 seconds, and the pit lane time for Keith Nelson was 49 seconds total, with 17.8 of that stopped. So we could be seeing a race here, unless unless he absolutely doesn't have to put any fuel at all into that car.
Perfect entry into pit lane for Aero Nam. Here's Keith Nelson Jr. He's got Chuck Lobano for company. Yet to pit is Chuck Lobano. Leon Riquez follows Aero Nam into the pits on lap 17 of the race. It's lap 18 as they get to the box, as they cross the line. Keith Nelson Jr. chasing down Chuck Lobano. This shouldn't be a huge battle. He doesn't need to go for the move. His focus right now is on Aero Nam, who's still in pit lane. Around the outside is Keith Nelson Jr. almost losing the car. Can he hold on to it? Yes, he can. Just about. It's a scary, scary moment for the next race leader as Aero Nam finds himself on pit exit. Is he going to come out ahead? I think he is. I can hear the roar of that V8 engine as he goes through into turn 1, and there he is. He has got the lead of the race. Aero Nam, 1.8 seconds, probably about 8 tenths of that was gained as Nelson Jr. made the mistake into Sunset Bend, but regardless, Aero Nam leads this race very comfortably indeed.
Right now, Keith Nelson is seeing dollar signs. He has already got warm tires. I believe he only took the 2 with this pit lane time. He's already got those warmed up. Euro does not have those warmed up. So we'll see this gap shrink really quickly, and we're going to have a fight for the lead. And don't you count out Scotty Banks yet. He is lurking 4.5 seconds back from Keith Nelson. I think he took 4. He may have been able to get a quick 4-tire change in there and is coming fast.
4.6 seconds. He's already gained about 4 tenths of a second on the last couple of laps on Keith Nelson. And as these two start to battle, if they do indeed start to battle, as Keith Nelson tries to catch up to Aero Nam, and that will play into the hands of Scotty Banks, but we'll have to wait, because while he's catching up on the warm tyres, once Aero gets his tyres up to temperature, with only 19 minutes now to go in the race, 18 minutes actually, Aero Nam does like to accelerate away into that second stint there. I'd say though, he's not doing it right now. So Nelson Jr. can hold on to that hope, and he will be driving that Mustang to absolutely 110% of its limit.
These right-hand corners are where the difference is going to be in the tire temperatures the most. Coming there through the S's now into the Le Mans. He's within slipstream range. He's going to be able to get enough of the slipstream that Aero's not going to be able to pull away. He may even close down a 10th or 2 down this straightaway, and then he's still going to have the warmer tires going into sunset. If he gets this right, he's going to be right there next lap.
Strategy game played between the two of them as we switch to the battle for 19th position. This is Brian Howard. He's attacking David Blair. He's going to look to get to the outside in that Baton Rouge 77 car. There is no way around at the moment. It's a slight mistake from David Blair out of the corner. 8 tenths of a second between Keith Nelson Jr. and Aero Nam, by the way. 2:19.2 are across the line for Scotty Banks. This is Mike Thompson Jr. and it's for 3rd place in the amateur category for that podium. Chuck Lobano, who got ahead of him in the pit stops, but can Mike Thompson Jr. find himself in that 3rd position? No, he can't, not just yet. Going to take a wider line through into sunset, hit the first apex, look for the second one, then look for the 3rd as well, and maybe even a chance to get around Chuck Lobano down into turn 1. It's a very good exit indeed. Can he find maybe a little bit of a dive bomb, a little bit of a cheeky move through into this corner? The 115 car not able to find a way round just yet. Can you carry the speed through turn 1 out into turn 3? And the answer right now is a pretty clear no.
Right now, these amateurs benefiting from the lap 1 carnage, now occupying 9th through 13th. This is going to be a huge haul of points for these drivers. Chuck Lobano is going to be happy to have those points. The only bad news for Chuck is 2 positions ahead of him is the current points leader, Dan Ott, and he sits 19 points behind Dan. So having this good finish is well and good, but he needs Dan to be behind him.
Championship is really hotting up. We've not got long to go after this round. 4 rounds to go after Sebring, and that includes the 2020 race as well. So plenty of chance for those points to be clawed back. But right now, it is essentially a make or break move for both of these guys. Slightly deep goes Chuck Lobano. Scotty Banks for what it's worth, at the top of the field. He's not really gaining any time on Keith Nelson Jr. This is the battle for the lead of the race in the amateur category. And it's Andres just trying to reel in Danot and keep him honest as much as he can as we go into the final quarter of this race. This is where it becomes very enthralling indeed. Nelson Jr., by the way, 19.2 across the line, 19.5 for Aeronom. Nelson Jr. has found something in the second stint, and right now he might be on his way to finding the lead of this race. So there was a little bit of traffic getting involved, so it's not a totally scientific measure. This for the Pro Class win, which is brought to you by Gunfire Games, who are the developers of the newly announced video game Remnant 2. For more information on Remnant 2, you can visit www.remnantgame.com.
Those guys came on in mid-season for us to sponsor the Pro Division. Super happy to have them. Matthew Gazinda, one of our Pro Division drivers, actually is one of the founding members of Gunfire Games. So I had a nice connection there, able to get his company's logo there on the car and a little bit of money to help our prize pool. So really glad to have them aboard again this season. And so far, putting on a good show in this Pro Division and a bona fide race for the lead, though it looks like they're kind of leaving Scotty Banks behind. I'm guessing maybe he didn't take 4 tires. He just had to sit that much longer for fuel because he wasn't able to save nearly as much as these two drivers were at the front. He had to close that gap up.
We're measuring gallons here in the American Muscle Series, which I'm going to be honest with you, when you do the notes for us commentators every week, it does always slightly confuse me because I haven't got a clue what a gallon is. So I think it's about 2.3 that they have to take according to the sheet during the pit stop. So maybe just 4.5 gallons they need to take during the pit stop. So potentially Scotty had to take a little bit more than that, perhaps even 5. I don't quite know how significant the jump from 4.5 to 5 is.
It's about 1 3/4 liters, but I think Scotty would have had to take closer to 4.5, and these guys that are up front taking closer to 4 by being able to save fuel. We know that Aeronom was able to save a lot of fuel as he stretched it out 1 lap further than everybody else. But what we don't know is was Keith Nelson able to stretch it out even further as well and just decided to come in early to try to undercut.
Well, 2 battles for 2 leads, and they're both separated by 0.4 of a second, 0.3 of a second as we go down the straight. It's Andres and Ott, Nelson Jr. and Aeronom. Jeff Andres keeping Danot honest throughout the course of his race, and now he invites himself down the inside into Sunset Bend, and he looks to pull alongside down into turn 1. It's 0.1 of a second separating the two of them, and it's closing and closing and closing for Jeff Andres, who is now in the range of being able to outbrake his rival, but not quite able to do so. Has to stay behind. Meanwhile, Aeronom has pulled out just 0.1 of a second or so on Keith Nelson Jr. These two guys still pretty inseparable. Looking maybe to the inside, no. Not quite able to find a way through just yet. Jeff Andres having to bide his time. All of these guys having to bide his time. We have got 11 minutes to go in the 60 minutes that's allotted here at Sebring and Randall McGrew. This is absolutely turning into the best race of the season.
So far, so good. We may see some of these drivers taking it a little easy, still making sure they have enough fuel for the end of the race. This is the point in time where drivers are really going to be feeling their tires. They're used to only driving these for 40 minutes. This extra 20 minutes really separates the wheat from the chaff when it comes to who can take care of their tires. Some of those drivers will have overdriven them and be absolutely hurting out there. Other drivers will be just fine. And it looks like Eero and Keith both just fine. Keith hanging on there and going to have the benefit of slipstream and keeping in contact. You see some black marks coming from Eero's tires there coming through Le Mans. He is really on the limit.
I don't know if Keith has got the pace and he's keeping up with Aero because of the slipstream, and obviously because he's got enough pace, but whether he has that extra little bit of pace to overtake him is another matter. And also, when do you want to overtake him? He takes a wider line through Sunset as often the chasing car chooses to. And now a good run out of that final corner is the Spider-Man car just ahead of them, which I haven't seen before, but a very interesting livery. That will maybe be an important factor if they catch up to that within the next 3 or 4 minutes. 10 minutes to go in this race. Make that about 4 or 5 laps.
I can tell you what Keith Nelson is doing right now is he is sizing up aerodynamics, seeing if there is anywhere that he is faster than him, and trying to plan out when he's going to make that move.
Matt Malone and Chuck Labano are having a battle, and through goes Matt Malone on this occasion. Now down the inside he goes of the next car that's in his sights. That's Charles Ozier. As a pro car, you don't want to be caught up in battling these amateurs, but you have to, particularly when your day isn't going particularly superbly. It's not in a bad drive from Matt Malone by any stretch of the imagination. I'm sure he'd like to be in that top 8 pack. But right now having the frustrating job of just gaining points on people that aren't in your class now. Tucking in on the 100 car. Actually proving to be very difficult to make a move around this circuit. Not necessarily difficult, but definitely not an easy circuit to make a move. Might be the hairpin that's Matt Malone's next opportunity. Let's wait and see what he can do. Has to go to the outside. It's a defence from Chuck Labano. Not Chuck Labano, it's a defence from Charles Ozier. Matt Malone maybe looking for a switchback through the chicane. He goes, it's not a switchback. Instead, he's going to squeeze himself through an impossible gap and have the inside line for the next corner. It's only a slight kink that goes left, but it's just going to be enough for Matt Malone to keep his nose in front. Now down braking into the right-hander. Matt Malone holds it around the outside in the number 83 machine and is able to get the move done. Make it stick. Superb stuff from Matt Malone.
Absolutely superb move, and we see him now up to 12th position. He had that drive-through penalty very early in the race. Very happy probably that this is a 60-minute race, gives him more time to make up spots. So all in all, a good recovery run from Malone here and getting some good content, having to pass all these drivers. Glad to see the amateur not just making way for the pro driver, giving him a little bit of the business and throwing a defensive move in there.
They are all scored in the same championship, if I'm not mistaken, Randall. So, well, whilst they're separated out, of course, in championships, they are scoring essentially the same points. They're after the same points, aren't they? It's just that it goes towards different championships.
Absolutely. Basically 2 leaderboards. Everybody's going for the same points. So every position counts. It doesn't matter what label is on that car. You need to get around them.
Speaking of, this is the battle for the lead in the amateur division. So essentially the way that would work for those maybe needing a slightly better explanation in the YouTube chat. If you were, basically if these guys were to be battling for 4th position overall, they'd be gaining more points despite still getting the win in the amateur division. That's essentially how that one works. Combined points, separate championships. 6.5 minutes to go in this race. 0.6 of a second is the gap for the lead of the overall race for the Gunfire Games Pro category. As for the amateur division, it is 0.6 of a second as they go through into Sector 2. That's between Dan Ott and Jeff Andres. This is Mike Nickham, Jay Little and Phil Keck, our camera focused on, as they go up into the hairpin chicane section of this Sebring International Raceway. Battling for the minor positions, but every single one counts under this new Season 4 points scoring system.
And in a field this size, finishing 20th is still not bad, especially for an amateur. So some of these pro drivers maybe not getting as many points as they'd like, but it could be a lot worse. So you need to stay out there, keep clicking off those laps. You never know what could happen. You can find yourself easily in the top 15 by the end of this race, even though there's just over 5 minutes left. Some crazy things can happen here at Sebring.
Yeah, it's a good point as well, of course. They are minor positions in terms of it's not a top 10, and I think every racing driver's goal is first the podium, first and foremost, but also a top 10 sort of notionally. But in a field of 45, top 20, top half, still pretty good haul of points. Here's Matt Malone, battle for the top 10. In fact, he's going to be overtaken on this occasion, I believe. No, he does the overtaking on Mike Thompson Jr. Slightly confusing, because all my paints have rejigged throughout the course of this race, and Matt Malone's now in a completely different coloured car to what he was from me at the start of this race. But he's in 11th position, shape-shifting car or not. That being said, Mike Thompson's going to try and get 3 points back. Maybe down into turn 1. Plenty of pace in that Mustang. We're on a chance, really, to get through. Does he go for the switchback?
Malone running a little wide there, just a little bit greedy on the exit of turn 1, gets in the dirt, manages to save it though. That can quickly turn disastrous. All your weight's still there on the outside wheels and they suddenly hit the dirt, continue spinning. Seen many driver lose it there. Matt Malone showing some real skills, able to make the correction very quickly and keep that car on track.
This is Andres and Ott once more. 5/10 of a second separating the two of them. We've got 4 minutes to go in this race. I mean, Randall, probably time for a prediction from you. To 2 categories in this race. Who wins both of them?
Right now, it looks like Eero's putting the moves on Keith Nelson. Keith Nelson in trouble, has dropped back quickly. He stopped on the side of the track. Well, that's one prediction easily handled. Eero now looks like he's going to bring home this race. Keith Nelson having some issues here coming up through Lamont, and I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe some sort of mechanical failure there in his rig, or one of those infamous iRacing landmines you can hear right now. The throttle is pinned. This is definitely a disconnect issue with his hardware. Absolute heartbreak, man. He had the best chance he's had all season, and it ends so quickly.
Keith Nelson Jr. in what is also a huge moment in this championship is off at the side of the road just before the Allman Straight, and that might at least notionally hand Aero Nam his Simpit trophy by the end of this season. It was 10 points already, and that gap is going to extend to what will feel like almost an insurmountable margin as he falls 45 cars down this field over the next couple of laps. Official confirmation that he is actually, I believe, out of this race. He's popped off of our timing screen. So definitely job done for Aero Nam. 11 seconds his gap to Scotty Banks, who just hasn't had the second stint he would have quite liked. Here's Matt Malone trying to get past Eric Ronenberg now, taking points from a pro-class colleague. Not quite able to do so just yet. Need a better exit out of this corner. This won't be the final lap of the race. We are going to squeeze one more in after this. Aero Nam will take the checker, the white flag, when he comes by pit lane next time. Down the pit straight next time, I should say, to better clarity. Mike Thompson involved in this battle as well. He's sitting in 3rd in the amateur standings. I'm sure 6 extra points for him would not go amiss. Keith Nelson may actually be able to do a little bit more running in this race. He's down in 34th position. He's registered as in the pits. Might just get it back out to take the flag and just bag a couple of points.
I can tell you right now that he's going to, because of the way drops work, he managed to net 77 points this race. That is his current largest drop. Unfortunately, with this race being worth 1.5 times points compared to a 40-minute weekend, that's still going to put him down 30 points to everybody else that finishes ahead of him. Dustin Allis having some issues there. Got a little bit too much of that curb coming through the bendy bits here. Sits and waits. Oh, maybe a little bit of contact there with the passing car. I think that was Brandon Carl that was flashing past him. Maybe he made a little bit of contact. We're seeing Ronenberg, Malone, and Mike Thompson now in a 3-way fight. They're going to be coming to take the white flag. This could heat up really quick.
Matt Malone looks to the inside line. Eric Ronenberg won't do much to defend it. There's not much he can do to defend this as the white flag is flying at Sebring. Matt Malone slides his way through into 9th position. The battle for the amateur class lead is probably what we've got to keep an eye on, because now here comes the attack from Jeff Andres, who can't quite find a way around just yet. Aeronami is going to finish this race first unless something dramatic happens to him in this event. Here goes Andres down into turn 1. Not able to get a better exit just yet, really. Not really able to squeeze his way through. 0.3 of a second. Surely he's got to send a dive somewhere, Randall.
It's gotta be here at the hairpin or at sunset. Just gotta go for it. Can't pass up an opportunity to win, as we see now Eero Nam working his way through tower turn and down towards the S's and then into Le Mans to finish his race. These two now coming to the hairpin. Do we see Charles Jose put the nose to the inside? Or sorry, Jeff Andres, not Charles Jose.
We don't, is the answer to that, unfortunately. As he's still just trying to find a way through. He's waiting. Maybe waiting for something big into sunset. That's probably his best opportunity. Here is Aeronam heading down the Ulman Straight for the final time. It's probably been a race that he'll feel he's worked hard for, but I think most would agree has ended in a slight bit of anticlimax. But despite the misfortune of Keith Nelson Jr., Aeronam is still going to win the hour-long race here in Sebring and put, dare I say, one hand onto that championship trophy, back to another championship, one that is still well and truly up in the air, in a race that is well and truly up in the air. Jeff Andres trying to attack Danot down into Le Mans. They go for the final time. It's going to have to be a huge dive down into Sunset Bend, turn 17. Final turn of the final lap of this race. Is there going to move from Jeff Andres, who is in 1/10 of a second? There's a defense from Danot. It's going to have to be around the outside into Sunset Bend. This could be a photo finish. He's so wide into that corner. He'll swoop through for a switchback move, but he's cut off. Cut off so superbly from Danot, who might just hold on for the race lead. It's a better exit from Andres. Can he pull alongside? I think Ott is going to hold it, and he does for the win in the amateur class. It's going to be an attack for the podium from Hosea on Thompson, I think. No, it was Thompson on Ronenberg in the end. But it's Mike Thompson who wins in the amateur category. Aeronam who wins in the pro category. And that is a classic at Sebring, Randall.
Sebring always seems to develop those last lap finishes that are super exciting. Cars drag racing toward the end. Anytime you see this track on a schedule, you can expect to have an exciting finish. I thought we were really going to have one there at the front of the field. Keith Nelson, unfortunately, caught by bad luck at that field disconnect. We see the remaining cars making their way now. Very stretched out. We don't see many races left here on the track. Everybody just bringing home the groceries at this point. Matthew Gazinda across the line. Scott Brooks there finishing. We're looking to look now. Roger Clark, whose car is remarkably clean compared to Martin Bork trailing behind him. See Roger struggling there with Le Mans all night. He's going to bring it home now in 28th. He had that incident with Edgar Sanchinelli. Had to get that car repaired earlier in the race. 28th place, and behind him, Martin Bork in 29th is going to be the last of the lead lap cars.
There we go then. It is a wrap in Sebring. We'll get your race results confirmed in a moment, and then we'll at least provisionally confirmed, and then we'll drag in whoever wishes for an interview. Aeronam, I can see already in the waiting room after his victory. Scotty Banks, by the way, finishing second. Maybe slightly lucky with Keith Nelson, but at the end of the day, it is what it is, and I'm sure Scotty Banks will be happy with his second regardless, as he was right on the back of Keith Nelson and Aeronam throughout the course of that race. Anyway, here it is. Your results from Sebring. Aeronam wins the race. He was in the lead of the race, of course, before that issue with Keith Nelson Jr. Scotty Banks finishes in second position, with Luis Enriquez rounding out the podium. Jay Bast is in 4th with Evan Hubchak in 5th, and then it's Dunnington in 6th. Dan Ott wins in the amateur division in 7th, and then Jeff Andres is in 2nd over there in 8th overall. Matt Malone and Ronenberg round out the top 10. Thompson Jr. finishes the podium in 11th for the amateurs, then 12th is Charles Hosier. Chuck Lobano, Hodgson and Howard ran out the top 15. And to round out our first page of results, it's David Blair, David Clymer and Phil Keck. Mike Nickham finishes 19th, and David Moore rounds out the top 20. Jay Little in 21st, and it's Carl 21st. Carl, Arliss, Hansen and Thompson rounding out the top 25. Then it's Gazenda, Brooks, Clark, Bork and Besnod for the top 30. Keith Nelson Jr. finishing in the end. He'll be classified in 31st position. 30 points we estimate he's lost based on the drop rounds from this event. 32nd is Ken Eshtep with Nick Batista in 33rd. Then Stefan Price in 34th. Ryan Bevel in 35th with Evic Snook 2 laps down in 36th. Edgar Sanchinelli not finishing the race in the end, 7 laps down. Roy Baker, Logan, Zoya, Pucic and McGrew, the rest of the failures to finish. But Randall, I suppose failure to start really, wasn't it? Not finish, but issues affecting everyone tonight, it seems.
Yeah, I wanted to check the security camera to see who came in to sabotage my car, wouldn't let the pedals work. So I was really looking forward to this race. But Ironam brings home another victory, and Tom, I think you found him for an interview.
We have Aeronauts. Welcome back to our little weekly chat here on the American Muscle Series broadcast. Yet another race, and well, you know, it's a bit unfortunate what happened to Keith Nelson Jr. with his wheel disconnection towards the end. But do you think you could have held him off anyway?
Yeah, I think the only reason he got out for me at the end was I had 2 misshifts in very unfortunate places. So yeah, at the end I was a little bit pulling away, so I had a little bit better tires. Yeah.
And in terms of the season now, it looks like you're well on your way to winning yet another championship with the American Muscle Series, particularly with already the 10 points. We estimate Keith's lost 30 to date. I mean, is it just about now trusting the process and keeping on until it's officially confirmed? Or have you got any more tricks up your sleeve?
Yeah, let's see. Maybe I have to practice a little bit more. Keith was very close this week. I think closest he's ever been so far. So that's really good. But yeah, I will keep trying and help Edgar and Jason out.
And Randall, any questions for Eric?
Hero, I gotta say sorry for having my pedal issues. Normally I'm there to jam up Keith for a few laps to let you run away. So it's good to see that somebody has the pace to run with you. Were you sweating at all seeing him so close after the pit stop, or were you pretty confident you had him beat?
Yeah, it was really close. He had 1 lap on the cold tires, so his tires were much better. So he was catching up really fast. Yeah, he did a really good job in the first half of the race, saving fuel, saving his tires. So that was very, very clever from him. Scotty caught us up, but I knew he's no risk because he had to take more fuel. But yeah, it was, yeah, let's see.
And
And
finally,
sorry, Tom.
carry on.
We see a rare mistake out of you, Arrow, there on the start. They're getting a little bit wide on the exit of turn 1. You had a few follow you in the likes of Luis Enriquez and maybe even Scott Banks. We're gonna see more of those mistakes. Maybe give us a little bit more excitement up front.
Yeah, that was really dumb from me. Yeah, I was going to 4th gear. I should have been 3rd gear. So yeah, but yeah, everybody followed me. So it's not always the smartest thing to follow me.
All right, Arrow. Good race, man.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Eric. That was Aero Nam, the winner of the pro category and the race overall. But Randall, we'll go to your closing thoughts. Then we'll wrap out with a little bit of administrative stuff that we have to do at the end of these broadcasts. But a great race at Sebring.
Great race at Sebring. We saw fuel saving at the front. Unfortunately, just the nature of the beast when it comes to iRacing. Those guys were, even though they were saving fuel, don't don't think that they were laying back. Those guys were absolutely flying. We saw the gap back to Luis Enriquez there at the pit stop was near 9 to 10 seconds. So they were still carrying a lot of speed. Those three are absolutely flying out there. Saw a lot of battles. 60-minute races are really tough in these cars.
They definitely are. Well, if you want to keep watching the racing, plenty of upcoming broadcasts here on Slow Motion Broadcasting's YouTube channel. Thursday, March the 23rd at 9:15 p.m. Eastern Time, the Spec 5 World Tour heads over to the Red Bull Ring. On Sunday, March the 26th, 8:10 p.m. Eastern, the XSLR Championship in the Dirt Street Stocks head over to Limerland. Then, of course, next week we're back at it again for yet another double header. WSRL starts at 8:45 p.m. That's GTP, LMP2 and GT3 cars at the Hockenheim Ring. Then, of course, we're back at 9:10 p.m. Eastern for the Mustangs at Barber. I have been Tom Dillon. Jesse Olsen has been in the commentary box. And finally, one more thing that I do have to mention before we round out this stream is that if you do love this series and want to show it that little bit of extra support, you can head over to the D Nut Stuff Etsy shop and get yourself a customized coaster or mug, a travel mug or slate coaster to be exact. That is etsy.com/shop/D Nut Stuff. But for myself, Tom Dillon, Randall McGrew, and Jesse Olsen, we'd like to thank you all very much for watching this race from Sebring, and we'll see you all later. Good night.
Not. So Patrick, do we describe this for everybody, Rob?
What?
You
What?
describe it. You describe it. I
What?
do enough talking.
Whatever. I think any car's dead in iRacing. I think it's gone.
Oh, it's definitely. I agree. It's not going to survive much. But I still think we'll find opportunities to race it, just not as fruitful as before.
Some of your like some of them just want to like make. What's the thing? Like that guy wanted to make like dolls out of Tyler's hair, but then there's just other guys who are just like. He did. He would say weird things to Tyler, man. Like he was a strange guy. And then like other guys would just show up and nowhere. He's like,
Oh, I
"Oh,
just need to-
we never met you? Sure, come race this 24 with us." And then you just jump in the car and wreck us out in a lap and be like, "Okay, never see you again."
Yeah, that
Like,
was
okay. Well, better luck next year, I guess.
That was the guy from.
Bye.